Hey there, Grumpy Old Fart here. This is a compilation video of some of my greatest hits. Hope y'all enjoy them.
The Mud Bath Defense. Now there's a spell in Dungeons & Dragons called Transmute Rock to Mud. It's a 5th level magic user spell. It's a 5th level druid spell. Go and research that. Read up on it really good. Pay close attention to the area of effect. Okay? Now, getting back to the story here. Over the years, I've seen some really creative players. I've made videos where I talk about the Wile E. Coyote defense and the homemade flamethrower. Sometimes players can really come up with some doozies. In my mind, the best such creative solutions come from improvisation out of desperation. There's an old adage. Pulling it right out of your ass. I was running a game years ago. My group, the group I was running, there were 6 9th level players. They were deep underground. They were being pursued by a large group of drow elves. They had stolen the mystic MacGuffin of destiny or whatever, and it was the object that was necessary to complete the quest, and they were beating feet trying to escape. Unfortunately, they had been spotted, and a drow war party was after them. 2 of the group had been wounded and were being carried. They picked one of the 4 exits to the surface and were scrambling up this narrow passageway. They still had a long way to go, and they were carrying the wounded. The drow were gaining quickly. After all, this is their area, The group knew they were never, ever going to outrun the drow, so they needed a way to slow their pursuers down. The druid told the thief to wait with him, just in case, at the top of a long, sloping passage. The rest carried the wounded and continued on. The druid cast Transmute Rock to Mud onto the ceiling of the sloping passage, just as the drow entered the other end. The drow were 40 feet away, and the area of effect of the spell is a 2 double-marked cube per level. The 9th level druid's area of effect with this spell was 180 feet by 180 feet by 180 feet. This encompassed the entire 40-foot passageway, 180 feet above, and 140 feet beyond the passageway. So it was something like, it was a 10-foot wide passage, so it was something like, it was 170 feet divvied twice on either side, and it was 180 feet up and 180 feet down, and it was just ridiculous. The entire area filled with mud, because the mud doesn't, and a little bit of it cling, but the most of it, the weight of it pulled it in and filled the passageway, burying the drow. The next round, as the drow were fighting to find an area to breathe, the druid cast Dispel Magic, which turned the mud into stone. Now, casting rock to mud on the floor would have dropped them into the mud, and it would have slowed them down, surely. But there are ways for them to escape. Casting it on the ceiling above the group, above the enemy, buried them, ensuring their entrapment. The Dispel Magic entombed them and blocked the passage forever. It's the creative uses of spells that are going to be remembered forever by your group. The flamethrower, for example, the creative use of items, the Wile E. Coyote defense, where you create rock out of thin air and it falls on them. This is another one of those areas where the player figured a better way to do something using a spell that may not have been intended that way. A lot of people see rock to mud as, oh, it's on the ground, they're going to sink in the mud. That's all well and good, but what if the mud falls on them? You see what I'm saying? As I recall, Larry was running that druid, and yeah, it worked out well. Larry was a smart player, but my contention there is, again, a lot of the times it's not what you have, it's how you use it. So keep that in mind, and also pay close attention to areas of effect, because if it's X amount per level, it goes up every time you increase in level. A 9th level wizard or a 9th level druid can be pretty badass. Just the fly swatter defense. I did a video a while back on the Wile E. Coyote defense. This is very similar. There is a magic user spell in the Advanced Dungeons & Dragons Player's Handbook called Wall of Iron. It is a 5th level spell and is so very useful. I've been playing this game for 47 years and I've been running it since 1979. I've seen a lot of interesting, intriguing, and imaginative ways to use various spells. Wall of Iron is no different. I've seen it used as a barrier to keep monsters away. I've seen it used as a makeshift bridge. I've seen it used as a cap to prevent denizens of the Underdark from escaping the depths. It's just amazing what you can do with a massive sheet of iron. One of the best ways I've ever seen this spell used was in a castle. There was a long corridor, 30 feet wide, and it was the path of approach for a horde of orcs. The player characters were stuck in the back of this corridor. There were no doors. They had fought themselves back into a corner. They were outnumbered, something like 100 to 1 or something, and it was crazy. They were against the wall, had nowhere to go. There were 6 player characters and over 100 orcs. They were in deep kimchi. I mean, they were starting to figure out new characters to make at that point. The wizard in the group, a 13th level magic user, cast Wall of Iron above the orcs. The area was a 30-foot wide by 165-foot long. The area of effect was 30 foot wide by 165 feet long and 3 1/4 inches thick. Okay, cast it above them in the passage. Now, he couldn't get it right next to the player characters, but, it encompassed most of the orcs. Now, iron weighs 491.5 pounds, roughly, per cubic foot. This iron plate weighed in at about 122.87 pounds per square foot, for a grand total of 23,959 total pounds. Now, not being supported by anything, of course, it fell on the orcs. Orcs go splat. The vast majority of the orc horde became goo under this iron plate, and what few escaped were easy for the player characters to dispatch. That was one of the, in my opinion, the best use of that spell at that time. I honestly couldn't figure out how they were going to get away from it. This particular wizard had never used Wall of Iron before. He had never memorized the spell. I knew he had it in his spell book, but he hardly ever memorized it. He never memorized it. It's the first time I recall him memorizing it. And he just happened to have it for the day. And he was looking through trying to find something he could use, because he had already expended Fireball and Lightning Bolt and all these others, the more common spells. So all he had left was this one Wall of Iron. And he used it to great effect, like a big fly swatter. Remember that regardless of what spells a wizard is stuck with, most of them can be useful in some way or another. I have talked at length about how, precast spells and other things, how different spells can be used for different effects. The spell Material for the Wily Coyote defense keeps springing to mind for some reason, because it's very similar. That spell is intended to create material for for other useful intents. I don't think it was meant to drop on people, but it works so well. Again, when you're running any kind of a spellcaster in Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, read your spells. There are always loopholes if you look hard enough. It's not what you have, it's how you use it. Just keep that in mind. And try, if you're a dungeon master, try to incorporate this into your player's mindset. Your games will be a lot more interesting, I promise. I was going through the spell book, the player's handbook in the Unearthed Arcana the other day, and I came across a spell that I had almost forgotten about. This is a really great spell. It's called
material. Now, this spell is so damned useful, especially if you're up above your opponent. Okay, imagine the setting. You and your fellow players are running from a horde of orcs. I don't know, maybe they're being led by evil fighters commanded by a vicious leader, and your 5th level magic user lets the group continue along the corridor while he begins casting. When the bad guys arrive, they find a dead end. Your magic user casts material and filled in the corridor with stone. Material is on page 55 of the Unearthed Arcana, and you really need to read that spell. The material spell is a 3rd level magic user spell, which means that a magic user gets it at 5th level. The area of effect is 1 cubic foot per level of the caster, which means that the minimum area of effect is up to 5 cubic feet. Imagine a block of granite 5 foot high, 5 foot wide, and 5 foot deep. And you can increase the size by decreasing the depth. So, there's no limit on the shape. But imagine that big block of granite, what you can do with that. Granite weighs about 175 pounds per cubic foot. This 875 pound block of granite is just so damned useful. A group of enemies below you make nice targets. And granite isn't the only thing you can make with this spell. 5 cubic feet of water will help fight fires and fill pits in the desert. Gives you drinking water. The same volume of air will fill enclosed spaces and prevent suffocation. The uses are many and varied. I've seen multiple examples in my AD&D gaming career of high-level magic users squishing enemies with conjured blocks of granite. In my circles, we've dubbed it the Wile E. Coyote defense. Because in the old cartoons, the Roadrunner kept, the coyote kept getting stuff dropped on him. In 1994, I was running a game with 5 5th and 6th level characters. I had 5 players. They were all 5th and 6th level. At one point, a dozen gnolls were chasing them, and they sought refuge in an old tower. The 6th level magic user waited for them to congregate below, trying to figure out how best to assault the tower. As they were standing there, a block of granite weighing over 1,000 pounds slammed down on top of them, just like in the cartoons. Remember, always read your spells. Many of them have uses far beyond their intended design. This is just one use of this spell. You can use it to create virtually any non-living, non-processed, non-manufactured, or refined items, which still leaves a hell of a lot of stuff for you to use. And creating a cubic foot of it per level is a lot of material to work with. I'm just saying. 5 cubic feet of granite will block a hallway. It makes an excellent projectile to drop on somebody. And it has a range of about, I want to say it's 10 feet. So, you're standing in the window, you're looking down, they're standing there, you create it right there, and it just drops. Because gravity is gravity, If you get the opportunity, check out this spell, and again, read all the spells, but specifically spells like this, because spells like this make the game fun, especially in the creative ways you can use them. And because there's, I hate to say loopholes, but because there's so little, guidance on how to do it, it leaves a lot of loopholes. So, just saying. Always have an out. Now, whenever I play in any tabletop role-playing game, I always try and plan a way to escape from any situation. Now, in some role-playing games, this involves studying the terrain or stashing an extra horse nearby, or in the case of Recon, the role-playing game, perhaps a few well-placed claymore mines. You know what I'm saying? In Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, there are tons of ways to escape bad situations. Teleportation, plane shift, polymorph self, water breathing, you cast water breathing on yourself and jump in the water. People don't see you and they think you're gone, or you can swim to safety or whatever. These are all great ways to effect a quick escape. Even low-level magic users can use sleep and spider climb. Always, always. You can cast sleep on the bad guys and run, or cast spider climb and climb up in the shadows in the corner and hide. They're always have an out. That's my thing. One of my favorite escape tactics is a spell called Rope Trick. As a magic user, it's called Rope Trick. This simple second level spell allows a wizard to enter an extra dimensional space. The duration is 2 turns per level. So the minimum duration is an hour, because you can get it at second level. It's a second level spell, so you have to be third level to get it. That's 6 turns. 6 turns is an hour. The minimum duration is an hour. If you are out of the enemy's sight long enough to cast a spell and climb the rope, they will not be able to find you for an hour. Be sure to pull the rope up after you, of course, into that extra dimensional space. And you can do several of your buddies too. Just read the spell. It is a rare enemy that will wait in an empty room for an hour just in case you show back up. If they really want to find you, they'll move off in search of you. They're going to find other avenues where you could have escaped from, that kind of thing. Or then there's the old standard, well, they must have teleported because there's magic, Waiting there is illogical and makes no sense. My opinion, that's logical. Once they are gone, you can climb down and be on your way. Now, people always ask me whenever I'm picking spells for the day in any game, in any Dungeons and Dragons game, I always say, well, I had to take Rope Trick. Well, why do you take Rope Trick? Because it's an escape. Well, that's a waste of a spell. No, it's not. If it keeps your ass alive, it's not a waste of nothing. I'm just saying. Survivability. Years ago, I was part of a group of players. Our party had gotten into a scrap in town, and two of our people were captured by the city guard. They threw us in a cell, and then they turned and went after the others. There were 2 guards left, and they were manning the guardhouse. One guy was on duty, the other guy was trying to take a nap. I used Rope Trick in the cell, and we hid. When the guard came to check on us, we were gone. He searched the cell and went to inform his captain. We came down an hour later. The cell was unlocked, so we crept out and escaped. Rope Trick is a simple spell that can be so very useful. People overlook it simply because it's, oh yeah, you can stand a rope up, Read the spell. Many spells have more uses than just the obvious. I talk about this so many times in my videos and in real life. If you're going to be a magic user, you got to know what your spells do, which means you have to read them. Same with clerics, same with any spellcaster. You got to know what your spells do. The wording of the spells is important. Don't take it for granted. Oh, it's a fireball. Well, okay, it's a fireball. It's got an area of effect that's pretty freaking huge. It does a lot of damage, and it does damage proportionate to how much, of your what level you are. There's all kinds of different things about that. So, it's not just the obvious spells. Rope Trick has so many uses. It's not alone. There's a lot of them that do. Read your spells. Always have an out. If you're not a magic user, have an extra horse hidden nearby. Pack extra supplies in case. Find a pirate captain and pay a little on the side so that worst come to worst, you can jump on the boat and he'll take you out of the harbor as a quick escape. There's hundreds of different ways, but they're all depending on the situation. To me, as a magic user, Rope Trick gives you the best chance for an out as a low-level magic user. I'm just saying. Anyway, if anybody has any comments or whatever, put it down there. I'm sure people would love to read them. I know I would. And again, I'm not trying to tell you how to run your game or how to play your character, but in my opinion, survivability is the name of the game. And if you can't, escape and survive to come back and play some more later, what's the point?
Best defense. One of the most important aspects of any tabletop role-playing game is survival. Survivability. The basic tenet of any role-playing game is to survive and grow stronger. By surviving, a character earns experience and thereby goes up in level. Some other games you earn experience and spend it to make your character more powerful. Either way, you live and grow stronger. The higher level grants more hit points and more powerful spells and greater combat abilities. Survivability is paramount in any tabletop role-playing game. As a fighter or cleric, armor class is extremely important. I've done videos on the best armor types for the value, the best bang for the buck, as it were. Check those out. As a thief, monk, or magic user, the armor restrictions can be an issue. Thieves, however, have abilities to let them hide and sneak around. Monks are very similar in that regards. Magic users, on the other hand, must rely on items of protection and the like. Since magic users and illusionists have the least amount of hit points of any character class, it would behoove them to take every precaution to avoid damage any way they can. Okay? This sounds like common knowledge, but you'll find out a lot of players don't even consider it. They don't care. They're looking at the spell. Oh, look, neat spells. I can do this much damage to that guy. Blah, 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 blah. You know, my fireball's getting more powerful. They don't care about avoiding damage. Okay? Lower level magic users are quite limited in such endeavors. They're stuck with invisibility, shield, protection from evil 10-foot radius, protection from normal missiles, and the like. Protecting your magic user, especially at lower levels, is, oh my god, important. At 7th level, they have access to minor globe of invulnerability. And they also get stone skin, which is very, very useful. Both are excellent. Autoluke's resilient sphere is good also. In my opinion, two of the better spells for defense are both 6th level, which means the wizard has to be 12th level to get them. The first one is Globe of Invulnerability. This prevents 1st through 4th level spells being used against the magic user while still allowing the magic user to cast spells themselves through the globe. It's not exactly the most powerful thing because anything over 4th level still gets through, but it's quite useful. You know, very, very useful. Plus, you get to cast spells back out of it. You can use your own magic, right? Okay. Anti-magic shell is the other one. It's a much more comprehensive defensive barrier, which prevents all magic, including your spells, the magic users, the wizard spells, within the shell. The shell also prevents the function of all magic items and weapons, though they still function as normal weapons. Okay? So, a fighter with a +4 sword can jump in there and smack you, but it's going to be a normal sword. But he can still smack you. You see what I'm saying? The barrier furthermore prevents breath weapons, gaze weapons, and voice weapons. That part's nice. Mr. Dragon breathes fire or spits acid. Yeah, you're protected. Because the acid is still a breath weapon, even if it's laying on the ground. Normal acid can get through. Magical acid, like the breath weapons like that, cannot. It even prevents the entrance of charmed, summoned, or conjured creatures. So a normal dragon can get in there and smack you. A conjured dragon cannot. You see? The anti-magic shell is an extremely, extremely effective defensive ability. Now, here's the sad part. It has a radius. Be sure to read the spell descriptions very thoroughly before you employ these. The area of effects and duration, as well as the range. These two spells can only be used on the magic user. Getting back to the area of effect with an anti-magic shell. If you have compadres, compatriots, fellow travelers, party members, and they're next to you while you use this thing, their magic items don't function either. Just saying, just so you know. I don't want nobody to go, oh, you said. No, I want to make that clear. You got to be careful how you use it. Every spell has downsides. In an emergency situation, The anti-magic shell can be a lifesaver, but the globe of invulnerability has more versatility in that the wizard can still cast spells through it. Also note that the minimum I talked about this. The minimum diameter of the anti-magic shell is 12 feet. So any friendly player characters are within that radius are going to find their magic items non-functional. I just talked about that. My contention is there are a number of spells as a magic user that can make you hard to hit. It makes it easy to defend against people. They can save your lives, but you got to be careful how you use them. And the best defense, in my opinion, is still a good offense, but the best offense is also a good defense. So,
retreat is an option, and this doesn't just work for D&D. It works for a number of other games as well. Pretty much any game, any role-playing game. This is an advice video for players and dungeon masters. It's just something to think about. I have witnessed over my 47-year gaming career that many people, players and game masters alike, simply run their characters headlong into battle with no regard for their character's well-being or survival. For example, my friend David refused to run away when he had taken massive amounts of damage. When he'd reached less than 10% of his hit points, he continued striving to the last. Then, of course, he complained when he died. He was playing in my game. He complained when he died. My friend Greg ran an advanced Dungeons & Dragons game, and his villain cornered our group, forcing us to fight his evil paladin. In one single round, 4 of us rolled critical strikes. The bad guy lost an arm, an eye, and a leg, as well as over 60% of his hit points. Yet the villain continued to fight. After he died, I asked why he continued, and Greg had no answer. The villain had a necklace of teleportation. He could have left any damn time he wanted to. The battle lasted multiple rounds. That evil paladin should have retreated. He did not. In both of these examples, any intelligent being should have withdrawn. As a player, you must judge the circumstances, the strategic and tactical consequences of staying or running, and the individual personality traits of your character. Now, there are some characters who just want to fight, and you know, they don't know when to retreat. And you know, if that's the character you're running, that's cool. But you know, keep in mind, even Conan knew when to run away. I remember one specific story where a battle had gone against him, and he ended up crawling through a swamp for several days just to escape.
There's a number of questions that you need to ask.
Ask yourself in a combat situation, and it works for players and dungeon masters. One, is the withdrawal feasible? Can you make an escape with a reasonable chance of success? Is there a place to withdraw to? 2, is the fight necessary? If you're fighting just to fight, then the fight's not necessary. If you're fighting to prove a point, it's questionable. If it's a fight that will keep the mission alive or will overthrow the evil king or whatever, there, you know, it may very well be necessary, and heavy casualties may be encountered, but you have to judge that. Is the fight necessary? Is there a reasonable chance of success? If you continue, do you have at least a 50-50 chance of success? Because if the odds are against you succeeding, it won't matter if you continue to fight or not. You can either withdraw and lose the fight and save your forces, or you can continue to fight with a 50-50 chance of success. You know, maybe, maybe not, because if you lose, you still lost, but you lost all the forces as well, all of your troops. You see what I'm saying? Will the mission fail if you retreat? Usually in D&D, you're on a quest, or you're on a mission or whatever, and if you succeed at this one battle, is it instrumental in the quest, in the outcome?
Can you still succeed if you retreat? You see what I mean? Will the mission fail if you retreat? Number 5, if you retreat, will the enemy be able to pursue you? Because sometimes retreat is not an option in that instance. You have to make it so that the enemy cannot follow you. Okay? Can you possibly return later with better plans, better gear, better personnel, more personnel, with a better chance for victory? That's a possibility. Sometimes you retreat to fight another day. You run away and then grab better stuff and be better prepared and then come and do it again. What are your chances? Here's the big one. What are your chances of survival? Because the best D&D character in the world who's wasted on a failed attack is just another statistical number. If you can't survive the battle, why are you fighting it? Unless it's forced upon you. You see what I'm saying? In military terms, these questions and questions like these are called... There's a term in military, mission versus something. I forget what it's called. In essence, it's the cost. Is the cost worth the gain? Military commanders have to weigh this question with every decision they make. I have a book called Military Ethics, and it talks about that. Mission over survivability, I think it's called, something like that. But anyway, military commanders in real life have to weigh these questions with every decision they make. As a dungeon master, your villains have to ask these same questions. Furthermore, the dungeon master has to judge individual villains by their personality and morale. Is the gain worth the risk? Most bandits, for example, want gold that the PCs are carrying. If half the bandits are down and the rest are severely injured, there's a good chance they should retreat. You know what I'm saying? Kind of live to fight another day, or in this case, live to steal another day. More vested villains, like the evil paladins, the evil wizards, traitorous dukes, or their hired henchmen, their major henchmen, will weigh the questions above with much more judiciously. None of them will even show up, much less take any risks, unless the outcome is assured, or unless there's no danger. Survival is their ultimate goal. If the evil wizard employing the bandits takes a hit, say 20% of his hit points, there's a pretty good chance he'll flee, unless the battle and outcome are seriously necessary for the advancement of his plans. Major villains employ henchmen for a reason. They're expendable. As a dungeon master, if your major henchman is taking serious damage, I'm not talking about your major villain, I'm talking about the main guy that works for him, the major henchman. If he's taking serious damage, you have to weigh his loyalty. Mercenaries fight for gold. They generally don't fight for the cause. Honorable people who swear an oath of allegiance regardless of their alignment will fight to the death. Less honorable people who swear an oath will not hold that oath in such high regard. They won't be nearly as inviolate. They value their own survival over their honor. And here's the other thing. This happened a lot in medieval armies. They would go around and grab a bunch of peasants and grab your farm implements and come on, you're now conscripted. Conscripts will likely flee as fight. Some of them will fall to the ground and pretend to be injured or dead or whatever, but they don't want to be there. Okay, so you have to weigh their motivations and their loyalties of all the bad guys. Now, player characters are different. They play their own character. Dungeon masters have to play a plethora of different characters. As a dungeon master, you have to play your characters as individuals. Make notes of their motives and honor as well as their personality. Play them accordingly. Now, for a dose of reality, here we go. The laws of physics have to apply in your world, otherwise magic is meaningless. Magic, by definition, violates the laws of physics. If the laws of physics don't apply, then there's no natural physical laws for magic to violate. If the laws of physics apply, then injuries are real and have consequences. Normal people who sustain grievous injuries will seek self-preservation. The evil paladin in Greg's game from the example above should have fled at the first opportunity. A few hit points is not a serious injury, but losing an arm, a leg, or an eye is a game changer, much less losing all three. This particular villain could only use one-handed weapons, had no depth perception, and was prone. He was also losing 4 hit points per round from blood loss. Because each crit, you lose a point per round. That's the way I played in my games, and Greg ran it the same way. So he had 4 critical hits in one round, so he was losing 4 hit points per round just by laying there, because he was prone, because he'd lost a leg, he was laying on the ground. He was prone. Any normal person would have fled, or in this case, teleported, because he had an amulet, I think it was a teleportation. In his predicament, sticking around to fight was just stupid. If you're in a game and your character takes a critical hit, that right there is scary. Any normal person who loses an arm in battle and can still move runs away. Any normal person who loses a leg will crawl away and seek to hide. Any normal person who loses an eye will grab their face and run away and try to flee. This is reality. Okay? I did a video about those pesky magic users, something like that, how to deal with pesky wizards or whatever. And one of the things I always do is I try to throw a spear or a missile weapon and let it stick into the wizard's chest, because it's hard to summon the will to forcibly change reality, which is what spellcasting is, when you have a length of wood sticking out of your chest. That's reality. Magic has to work hand in hand with reality. Reality has to be real. The laws of physics have to apply. Otherwise, magic is pointless. Well, because magic defies the laws of physics. If there's no laws of physics to defy, magic is meaningless. Well, those same laws of physics apply to your character when he gets hurt. If you lose an arm, you're losing blood every round. If you seriously limit your ability to fight. Most sentient beings, or even non-sentient beings, when they lose a limb, buddy, they're running. They're getting out of there. They're escaping as quickly as they can. This is, if you're not playing your character that way, you're not playing your character well. It's that simple. As I said, even Conan ran away when the odds were against him. If there was no way to succeed, it's pointless to stay and fight. At some point, you turn Mother's picture to the wall and vamoose. You know what I'm saying? It's just the way it is. I was talking to a guy the other day, and he said in his game he doesn't allow psionics in first edition Dungeons and Dragons because he doesn't understand how they work or how they function or how to figure out if you've got them and all that. So I figured I'd do a video on psionics. In Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, there is an often overlooked ability that certain player characters may qualify for. They have to be human, or possibly dwarf or halfling, and their stats have to qualify. Minimum stats for this are you have to have at least one of intelligence, wisdom, or charisma of at least 16. So one of those has to be at least 16. Intelligence, wisdom, charisma has to be at least 16. Only one of them. If that's the case, if one of those stats is 16, you have the opportunity to roll for psionics. Dwarves cannot be wizards or magic users, so I allow them to qualify in my game. Many dungeon masters allow halflings to qualify, including me. Halflings are good. They can. In my opinion, they're okay for psionics. The way you determine if a character has psionics is this. First off, they have to be human and maybe dwarf or halfling. And then one of the intelligence, wisdom, or charisma has to be at least 16. So what you do is you roll a percentage, and then you figure out your bonuses. Now with your bonuses, you get 2.5 points for every intelligence point above 16. You get 1.5 points for each point of wisdom above 16, and you get 0.5 point
for every point of charisma above 16. So, if you have an intelligence of 17, it's a 2.5. Intelligence of 18 is 5. Intelligence of 19 is 7.5. Wisdom of 17 is 1.5 bonus. Wisdom of 18 is a plus 3 bonus. Wisdom of 19 is 4.5. And because of age and other factors, you can get bonus stuff higher than 18. So that's why I'm including them. For charisma of 17, it's a half of a point bonus. Charisma of 18 is a plus 1 bonus. And charisma of 19 is 1.5 bonus. Now, when you roll this percentage, you add these bonuses in, and any score of 100 plus and psionics are possessed. Now, I gotta be honest with you, I had a friend who really, really wanted psionics. He rolled up his character, and he had a character with a charisma of 17. So he was qualified to have psionics. So he rolled, and he rolled a 99. And 99.5, according to the book, doesn't quite get it done. I kind of let him squeak by. just because he really wanted it, and, you know, it's okay to fudge a little bit there. Half a point, I think we're okay with. But, according to the book, it has to be 100. So, once the character has, you know the character has psionics. To determine psionic ability, you know, if it's lower than 100, they don't have it. Okay, most characters don't have psionics. To determine psionic ability, once you know that they do have it, you roll a percentage, and you add 1 to the total for each point of intelligence, wisdom, and charisma above 12. And this is the bonus points. So if it's 13 or better, you add 1 for intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. Okay. If 2 of these are above 16, the bonus points are doubled. If all 3 of them are above 16, the bonus points are tripled. So, I roll a 50. Wait, I think I gave an example here. Hang on. Let's flip the page. So, in effect, you roll a D100 and add your total bonus points, which add up to 1 to 72. And this is your psionic strength, offense and defense. Your offense is that, and your defense is that. Psionic ability is double your psionic strength. So let me unpack all that. My human paladin has an intelligence, has an 18 charisma, a 17 wisdom, and a 15 intelligence. I roll a 99, add my 2.5 points for high stats, and bingo, I have psionics. I roll another D100 and get a 73. I have 14 bonus points for stats higher than 12. 18 charisma, 17 wisdom, 15 intelligence, above 12, all those above 12, that's how many points you get. So that totals up to 14. Now, since 2 of my stats are higher than 16, I get to double the bonus points. So it'd be 28. So it would be 73 plus 14 plus 14, because I get to double it, equals 101 psionic strength. And that's my offensive is 101, my defensive is 101. My total psionic ability is 202, and the reason you have to do that is basically your the way psionic combat is done. It takes offense and defense in. You also get other abilities. Psionic, what are they called? Psionic. They're the psionic powers that come with it. Disciplines, okay, and they're devotions and sciences. The disciplines that you get. I need to determine the attack and defense modes and the powers. It's easy. It's a simple percentage. You roll to determine the number of attack modes. Another roll determines the number of defense modes. And most dungeon masters allow you to pick them. Some of them make you roll them, and that's fine. Keep in mind though, on the attack modes, they're listed A, B, C, D, and E. A is your psionic blast, and that's the only one that affects non-psionics. The rest of them are used only against other psionics. So if you want to be able to affect non-psionics, you gotta, people without psionics, you have to take the psionic blast. Okay? It's also quite costly. So a third percentile roll will determine the number of psionic disciplines the character has. Minor disciplines called devotions include cell adjustment, which is a type of healing,
detection of magic, ESP, hypnosis, invisibility, levitation, among others. Major disciplines called sciences include things like dimension door, etherealness, telekinesis, telepathy, teleportation, things like that. Some of them can be quite powerful. Now I rolled a 13, so I only get one attack mode. For versatility, I took the Psionic Blast mode A. Okay. Next, I rolled a 51, so I get 3 defense modes. I take F, Mind Blank, which you have to take. And on the defensive side, you have to take Mind Blank. If you have Psionics, you have to take Mind Blank. The other ones are up to you. I take F and I. Intellect Fortress and... I took F. I took I, which is Intellect Fortress, and J, which is Tower of Iron Will. Those are 2 of the more powerful defensive modes. Different defense modes work differently versus different attack modes. The Dungeon Master has charts in the DM's guide for the various outcomes. And that's how you keep track of points and things like that. Psionic combat is done separate from regular combat. So keep that in mind. And for the disciplines, I roll a 79, so I get 4 minor and 1 major. Many Dungeon Masters will want to roll randomly. I usually do as well. I have played under Dungeon Masters who allow players to choose their disciplines, and either way is fine. Many people think psionics is just another form of magic, and it's fine if you want to think of it that way. Regardless, including psionics in your campaign can add new dimensions and new avenues of gameplay. Plus, regular fighters, regular thieves, they can get these psionics as well. The class of the character doesn't matter. It matters in some sciences and devotions and things like that. But having psionics, all that's based on is race and the stats you have for your intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. That's it. That's it. That's the only thing that matters. In 2nd edition, psionics became a character class called psionicists. And I prefer to include them with the different classes so as to add more variety to the game. I don't really push the psionicist class. I never did that. To me, it's a good class for 2nd edition. I like 1st edition. That's just me. 2nd edition is pretty compatible with Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, so either way you want to go is fine. So I hope I explained this well. Anybody who has any questions, put them in the comments, and I'll be glad to try to sort them out for you. Psionics can be a little confusing, but for the most part, it's pretty straightforward. It's the figuring out if you have them and figuring out how powerful they are. That's the part that really got people.